Welcome to the Pacific Research Institute's Next Round podcast. I'm Rowena Senior Vice President, and with me is Tim Anaya, Senior Director of Communications.
Hi, Ro. How are you?
Fine, thank you. I was in Pittsburgh last week meeting with a donor, and it was so refreshing, no pun intended, that the city was mask-free. And I have to say, unfortunately, the city of Pittsburgh has been very little foot traffic. I think a lot of the big banks and big office buildings still remain closed in Pittsburgh. I make this trip to Pittsburgh probably once a year over the last 12 years or so. And I've really seen tremendous urban renewal taking place in the city. A lot of young people have returned to the city, largely to work in tech. So I hope the pandemic doesn't set the city too far back.
My brother went to graduate school at the University of Pittsburgh, and I never made it out to visit while he was there. But he said, you have in mind kind of the old industrial town, and he said it's nothing like that anymore. It's really quite a big transformation the whole area has undergone.
Oh, it's really a lovely city. There's a lot of new high-rise buildings and parks, and there's still the old part of the city, but it's really transformed itself. And a lot of young people were moving there probably because of good value, lower cost of living. So the city had been very, very vibrant, but not so much anymore. But hopefully that'll change. So, Tim, the jobs report came out last week. It was a very disappointing 194,000 jobs created. It was about 500,000 less than economists had predicted. Unemployment fell to 4.8%, but that's because job participation rate also declined. I was looking at the California's numbers, and the state data lags the national data, but California's unemployment rate is still 7.5%. That's 50% higher than the national rate. So California lags the country, and I think that's one of the highest unemployment rates of any state.
I'm going to tease a little bit for our listeners, but our Wayne Weingarten has the final paper in his Breaking Down Barriers to Opportunity series on entrepreneurship coming out soon. And one of the things that I think is interesting on this whole point of lagging employment or people not going back to work is how difficult government has made it for small businesses to prosper, keep their doors open during the pandemic. And it continues. And you heard a lot about all these temporary measures and relief measures that were supposed to help small business. Well, really, in the long run, kind of been the death of many small businesses. Restaurants right and left that, kind of hung in there. Now they're closing because people aren't returning to downtown areas in sufficient numbers to go out to these wonderful restaurants at lunchtime. So, it's kind of interesting. It's, there's the old Reagan adage, I'm from the government and I'm here to help. Those are the most feared words in the English language. Well, it really has kind of been true for small businesses navigating through the pandemic.
Right. And also to add to that, the stock market's been pretty volatile the last couple of months. We have rising inflation, the supply chain problems. I don't know about you, Tim, but I am going to do my Christmas shopping early. I've got my brother's family checked off now. And in fact, I even have you checked off.
Oh, well, I have, it hasn't been good for my wallet, but I discovered QVC, which is the greatest place to shop. And I watch QVC now way too much.
Did you discover that in the pandemic?
I did. And it's not just, you think QVC is jewelry and women's clothes, but actually they have a lot of great stuff, electronic. They have a lot of even like tools for the garden. I bought a great set of hedge clippers on there. They have all sorts of really where I do the damage is stuff for my kitchen. But I have purchased nearly everything from my mom and dad. And I may have checked you off the list too. You buy things when you're on QVC and you see these things and they look wonderful. You just buy them and then you decide later who's going to get them. So you might.
I do that too. I sort things out. I thought, that would be good for Tim.
So you might be checked off on the list too. But they're all almost everything I've purchased is delivered already. So I think waiting till Christmas Eve might not be a good idea this.
Well, what I'm from all my reading, the consumers aren't really spending a whole lot. I don't know if they're not in an upbeat mood because of the pandemic and other problems are facing the country, but apparently they're not spending, and they probably aren't even looking for jobs right now. So I hate to say it, but I hope the M word, I hope we don't go to that in that direction.
Well, and then in California, and to give a little tease of next week's podcast, because of policies in general put down by state government that make it so difficult and so expensive to invest in the state and create jobs here and keep jobs here, you're seeing more businesses leave the state. We just saw last week on Friday or Thursday that Elon Musk announced that Tesla's headquarters is moving to Texas, and that follows a lot of Tesla's operations moving out of state. And we continue to have this, as the title of our study suggests, California migrating. We are exacerbating this problem of government policy pushing businesses, good-paying jobs, and individuals of all income levels to leave the state in much larger numbers.
That's right, Tim. And despite all of our problems, California is a terrific place to live. And last couple of weeks ago, we celebrated our Northern California Gala. And just wanted to mention to our listeners that we also have a Southern California Gala coming up. It's November 13th. That's a Saturday at Newport Beach. And our guest is keynote speaker is Molly Hemingway. Also, our honoree is Larry Elder. So I think folks who come out get Molly's free book signed by Molly. Isn't that right, Tim?
That's the plan.
Yeah. And my mother is the biggest Molly Hemingway fan, and she's a little too old to go to the gala, but I can't visit her without, she told me, having Molly's signed book on my hands. So we definitely look forward to having her, and we hope our Southern California listeners can join us. And all the details to register will be on our website at pacificresearch.org.
You'll get to meet Lance Azumi in person, who is the special co-host of our interview today.
Yeah. So, Tim, you and Lance recorded this podcast while I was out of town. How about giving our listeners an intro on it?
It's a really interesting discussion we have with Roxana Janka, who's with the Good For You Coalition, which is a new coalition that formed within the past year. And basically their whole objective is re-engaging students who have fallen through the cracks or on the verge of falling through the cracks after a year of learning loss and really trauma. And so they, are focusing on ensuring that students have equal access to the academic resources and the technology and the support that they need to, have a thriving, positive, supportive learning environment. They're very focused on ensuring that every student has the individually tailored learning opportunity that they need to succeed. And most importantly, to kind of dovetail this talk of the economy, to ensure that they have the skills training that they need to get a good paying job and succeed in the economy of today and the future. So it's a really interesting discussion. We talk a lot about a poll that they just released of California high school parents with their attitudes and their strong message to lawmakers on education issues and the performance of their child's schools during and in the months as we're at the tail end of the pandemic.
So thanks so much for listening. And here's Tim, Lance, and our special guest, Roxana Janka.
So, Roxana, we're so pleased to have you on to talk with us about what parents are looking for with their children's education as we emerge from the pandemic. So, before we begin, could you tell our listeners who may not be familiar with the Good For You campaign, tell us about your coalition and some of the things that you're doing to give students a more individualized education and prepare them for the workforce?
Sure. Thank you. First, thanks for having us on. We're very excited to share about our coalition. So Good For You, it's good, the number 4, the letter U, just like a Prince song. Efficiency with his lyrics we adopted for the name of our campaign. And the idea rose from the pandemic and seeing the gap of a one-size-fits-all education and how students were really suffering, and especially our most vulnerable students who take the brunt of any kind of disruption or difficulty that we experience, like the pandemic. And we are a coalition of parents, educators, community leaders, organizations who serve vulnerable youth, who understand that the best way to keep all students engaged is through a personalized learning with trauma-informed care. And so we understand that. And then we were curious about what parents thought. So we did a statewide poll and saw overwhelmingly parents felt the same way. And then we decided it's time. We need to create a coalition to raise awareness about the options that parents can have and demand, and about the ways that all schools can integrate some principles to help keep students engaged, learning, and prepared for life after they graduate high school. So that's how Good for You came to be.
And could I just quickly ask a quick follow-up there? Could you tell us a little bit more about this trauma-related learning that you mentioned?
Yes. So personalized learning with trauma-informed care is where first that the curriculum is individualized to the student. So it is based on the student's strengths, talents, needs, challenges, and this trauma-informed lens should be a part of the educational experience, because students endure trauma all the time, especially after this past year. This was this year of disruption to their school, to their lives, was traumatic. And when we see the symptoms of trauma show up in children, it shows up as disruptive behavior and other issues. And rather than treat those behaviors as discipline problems, we want teachers and educators and schools to instead take a trauma-informed approach, which helps students identify their emotions, learn how to cope, redeem themselves if it's necessary, problem solve, conflict resolution. These are the life skills that will serve students beyond high school. And frankly, I know some adults who could use some refinement of those skills too. So it's really important that that's part of the education experience too.
So Roxana, a lot of your work focuses on getting to students who are at risk before they drop out and turn to, unfortunately, we see too many turn to lives of criminal activity. So maybe you could set the stage for our listeners, just how bad is the dropout problem in California today, and how has the pandemic negatively affected students who were already struggling before COVID-19?
Yes. Absolutely. So we have about 500,000 opportunity youth in California, and this was pre-pandemic. So this number has likely gone up. And opportunity youth are 16 to 24-year-olds who are not in school and not in the workforce. They're not engaged in a job. So what are they doing? How are they spending their time when they have few other prospects? And the question that we want to answer and that drives us is what kind of life are they set up for without an education, a life of struggle. So we're very focused on that vulnerable population who were more negatively impacted by the pandemic. About 1.5 million students in California did not have access to a laptop or internet during school lockdowns. So, how in the heck were they at all able to learn and keep engaged and connected with their school and their peers? So we see a dramatic learning loss from this past year. And we know that students of color and those from low-income households were disproportionately affected as well.
So, Roxana, in recent weeks, we've learned that as we emerge from the COVID-19 pandemic, and you mentioned the learning losses and all the other negative things that have unfortunately flowed from the pandemic, enrollment has dropped sharply in the traditional public schools, both nationally and here in California, and particularly, for example, in the Los Angeles Unified School District. So what we're seeing on the flip side is enrollment in charter schools and private schools and even homeschool really skyrocketing. I've actually got a new book that's coming out in literally the next few days called The Homeschool Boom that looks at the pandemic, especially from what's going on in the homeschool community. But from what you're seeing on the front lines, why are parents and students voting with their feet, so to speak, in such large numbers by choosing alternative learning environments?
Right. So we heard from parents that they want personalized learning. That is undeniable. And no matter how great any teacher is, keeping 30 to 35 students engaged in a classroom, let alone a Zoom meeting, is a near impossible task. And realizing this, realizing our future is going to likely require us to be nimble between in-person and remote, just for the new life, the new reality. Parents want more flexibility, and they want a personalized attention for their kids. They want students to progress based on their competency in the subject matter, not how much time they spend in a seat. And they want to be prepared with life skills and job skills that serve the students beyond beyond their high school education, so that they're better prepared for college or to enter the workforce if that's what they choose for their future.
And let me follow up just real quickly there, that I know that your organization, your coalition, focuses on vulnerable students and especially those in communities of color. Could you, say just a few words about, maybe how they're feeling, in the aftermath of this pandemic with the learning loss, etc.?
Yes. So we, our poll, I'll just tell you a little bit about our poll. We conducted our poll in April of 2021. So at the end of this school year, the last school year, to see how parents were feeling after this first COVID school year. And the numbers were overwhelming in terms of support for these ideas of personalized learning, the necessity for equity in education, and these job and life skills. And African-American parents polled even higher. We oversampled for African-American parents to find out exactly, so we could credibly understand what they felt. And their intensity of support was even higher for those different concepts. Also, they're very concerned about students and their mental health. For a lot of students, school is an escape. It is a safe space. It's a place where they can take a break from maybe uncertain or difficult home lives, where they can go have a meal while learning, while receiving attention in the best schools. So taking that away from students and forcing them to learn in homes where they maybe couldn't find a quiet space or have access to the remote learning has negatively infected their mental health. And we know that parents are very concerned with that. So those are the ideas that are driving them as we come back to this school year now. And we agree that those are probably the reasons that they're choosing independent study, alternative learning programs that are better tailored to their individual student.
So let's take a deeper dive into your poll results. And I think, anyone who takes a look at them will see that they should be taken as a wake-up call at the state capitol. So first, your survey asked parents to give California's public high schools an A through F letter grade on a host of issues since the onset of the pandemic. So based on your findings, how did they rate?
Parents were pretty clear on this. They gave California education a D and an F in the following: in one-on-one instruction, the ability of the schools to provide one-on-one instruction for their kids, small group learning, tailored curriculum, not leaving kids behind. They do not feel that that's happening, leaving kids behind academically, reducing the dropout rate, preparing students for college, and arming them with marketable trade skills that they can use to enter the workforce directly. So these are demands of parents, and they don't feel like these needs are being met right now. And they give them a poor failing grade.
So now, your survey, Roxana, also asked parents to rate how California's public schools are doing to help those students who are most at risk from dropping out and, descending, unfortunately, into lives of poverty or even crime. So what are they saying are the priorities that schools should be doing to help prevent these at-risk students from slipping through the cracks?
Yes. So I'll also say this about the polling. We did a phone survey, which is considered very credible in the polling research industry, and it was 800 parents of high school age children in California, plus an oversample of African American parents, like I mentioned before. These are also voters. These parents are also voters, and they're the parents of high school age children. So not only just vulnerable children; these are all parents of all children, of high school age kids. And pollsters generally look for a magic number of 65%, which tells them that, yes, the support or disapproval is overwhelming. That's a super majority. And our poll numbers were in the 80s and 90s%. So it was overwhelming. And it's rare to see these kinds of strong numbers where you're getting 8 or 9 out of 10 people agreeing on the same thing. I don't know how. There's few things in the world that you can get 9 out of 10 people to agree on. And this is across party poverty lines, across economic, income, across regions in California. So that's dramatic. And some of the things that they said was 91%, so fully 9 out of 10 people say it's important to understand the unique challenges that are faced by individual students and then provide them the support to overcome those. So personalize the support and the resources for that student. 89% said it's important to structure school to serve individual students rather than a one-size-fits-all approach. Also, 92% said, like I mentioned before, that students should progress from grade to grade based on competency and mastery of the subject rather than time and seat. And then 86% said it's important to treat brave behaviors that are associated with trauma as opportunities to teach those life skills. So parents are recognizing that their students have suffered this past year and that they're going to have a harder time integrating back into a classroom with 30 or 40 other kids after this dramatic disruption that they've endured. So teachers and schools need to treat those students not as discipline cases, not with suspensions, which, by the way, is an equity issue because we know students of color and students from low-income homes are suspended at much higher rates, but instead as opportunities to teach them those life skills that are so important. And then one other is 83%. So 83% compared to the 90s that I was just reading off sounds not as much, but it's still dramatic. It's overwhelming that they want personalized learning with life and job skills for students. That was this is a key theme that we saw reinforced over and over in what parents want.
I just to follow up, those poll results, and they're amazing. Especially as you say, given the high percentage of parents agreeing about all these different issues, that they are very much against, or in contrast to that uniform, one size fits all, everyone march in lockstep system that the regular public schools are employing. What are your thoughts about that contrast between what parents believe and are hoping for and what the public schools are delivering?
Well, my hope is that it's just a lack of awareness of what parents want. I think that if we can highlight more the parent voice here, and that's what this coalition is aiming to do, is recruit like-minded and more parents into the coalition so we can share their voice with some power and emphasis. I think also that parents of vulnerable students population are not necessarily a population of voters that have been paid attention to, that have been heeded that much in the past. But things are changing. They're very clear about what they want and what they expect from lawmakers, and how they want to vote, how they will vote to support lawmakers who support these kinds of ideas. So hopefully the tide will start changing and people will wake up to the demands and needs of parents. Also, the pandemic exposed these gaps in a way that parents maybe never knew before. And there's a new realization and a new fervor, I think, for school to start changing up. We have to tailor that education experience to the individual student. And every student, no matter whether they're advanced academically or need a little more support, they will thrive better if the learning is individualized to them. Every student will benefit from that. And every parent, I think, or most parents will recognize the value of that.
So lawmakers in Sacramento, of course, took advantage of the COVID-19 pandemic to attack charter schools by denying them full funding and making it harder to open new charter schools going forward. Yet, as we've just been discussing, your survey results show that California's high school parents have a pretty strong message for lawmakers when it comes to making it harder for parents and students to exercise their school choice options to get an education that best meets their needs. So what did they say?
Yes, 87% said that parents should be able to choose which public school is best for their youth, and the intensity was high, which means that they more strongly agreed with that concept. So parents know what's best for their kids, and they should have the power to choose what's best for their kids when it comes to education options. 87%. So that's overwhelming. And then 88% said it's important for the legislature, the governor, to prioritize programs that get at-risk youth the education, support, resources, and preparation that they need in particular. Recovering a student who is dropped out or on the track to dropping out has such dramatic upside and positive impact for everyone. Education is not an industry that's confined to itself. We all know it affects all parts of our lives. So when we take a student who would otherwise be maybe a burden on public resources, more likely to end up in jail, commit crime, more likely to have a life of struggle and live in poverty. When we take a student on that track and convert them to a graduate with marketable trade skills, all of the positive contributions that they make impact our communities, our housing values, crime rates, mental health rate, public service costs, everything. The benefit and upside is exponential. So more and more people are realizing that it's not only for me and my kid, but all kids deserve equal, fair access to quality education and the support that they individually need so they can lead better lives and contribute to society along the rest of us.
So, your survey results, which, are eye-opening, they open up the question. So how do policymakers, for example, keep these most vulnerable students engaged in learning and in a learning environment that works best for them so they don't drop out and descend into a life of poverty and hardship?
Yes. So it goes back to those three keys that we've been talking about. First, ensuring equity, making sure all students have equal and fair access to a quality education, personalized learning with trauma-informed care, and giving kids job and life skills. Those were the three keys. And we tested a lot of different education concepts in our survey. And these were the ones that rose to the top again and again with overwhelming support. And one other thing is that personalized learning is being implemented more and more across the country, and it's being studied more and more. And we know that students who receive a personalized education, they are better at being engaged, they perform better, their academic achievement is higher, and the lowest performing students make substantial gains relative to their more advanced peers. And teachers can serve all level of students within a classroom if they implement personalized learning time, where they can do breakouts, and students who need more one-on-one time can receive that, while other students who can work independently do that. So it's a concept that doesn't have to be confined only to one-on-one sole instruction. It can be implemented in the classroom now. And it's really important, and parents want that. They're demanding that over and over again.
So based on your survey results, what are some of the reforms that the Good For You campaign is fighting for in Sacramento to ensure that kids have access to a quality education that meets their individual learning needs and prepares them for the demands of the workforce?
So at this time, our coalition just launched maybe a month ago, and we are actively recruiting. We are welcoming people into the coalition. We have some great organizations who advocate for trauma-informed care, personalized learning, virtual learning, different school choice options, alongside parents and teachers and educators. So we are now welcoming more into the coalition and invite everybody to join. Go to gogood4u.com and join us. And then we will look and identify and support wholeheartedly any policy or legislation that supports these ideals that parents are demanding. Personalized learning, trauma-informed care, ensuring students have job skills, life skills, all those, any policies and legislation that support that we're going to fight for.
Let me jump in there just to ask about that last of the three, the job and life skills. What kinds of things, would you like to see? Because, what we're seeing now, not just with dropouts, but, kids are not really learning those types of job and life skills in the regular public school education. And it's a real deficiency. What would you like to see to address that?
So we know from our partnerships, our schools who are part of this coalition that work with businesses, local businesses, they are demanding trained entry-level workers. They want a skilled workforce to hire from, and it's hard for them to find it. So on the job skills side, there are a lot of in-demand skills that contribute to this skilled workforce. And this includes soft skills like interviewing, professional phone skills, but then also learning for industry certifications like OSHA or safe food handling credentialing, different construction minimum certifications that you need, hands-on experience, paid internships, and then even job placement support. That should be a part of the education experience. It better serves students, and it better serves our business community, our local communities, if we can arm students with that knowledge. And then, like I mentioned before, that conflict resolution, anger control, resiliency. Life is full of ups and downs, and the support that you might receive in high school will not always be present in your life. So while you're there in high school and learning, those life skills should be a part of that education so that you can apply it for the rest of your lives, that resiliency, that grit, to not give up, to overcome challenges, to resolve conflicts and solve problems. So those are important parts of educating a human to adapt and perform better in life. So we believe, and parents believe, that should be a part of the educational experience.
And I think that's really true. I mean, in one of my previous books called Choosing Diversity, which focused on model charter schools around the country, the very first school that I profile in that book is a place called Life Learning Academy, which actually focuses on dropouts. Kids who have dropped out, who maybe had experience, unfortunately, in the criminal justice system, or who are even homeless. And one of the things that they are very big on over there is providing job skills to those kids, in addition to academic learning. But they have internship programs that they have with various businesses in the Bay Area where they're located. And so you have these kids who, may have dropped out, but now are, partnered with some large company to have an internship or some museum or something like that. And it's really made a change in the lives of these kids, some of whom we interviewed in a film that PRI did. So I think that, what you say about the importance of job skills, turning around the lives of children coming from these backgrounds is really incredibly important.
Yeah, it's very meaningful. We heard a lot of stories. I've heard a lot of stories from some of our schools that are in the coalition about students who, for instance, there was a student I heard about who lived in the Central Valley. His parents were migrant field workers. So he was not performing in school. He was dropping out, and he knew, okay, it's either I go to the fields or I go to this school. And he started with the school, got into the logistics program, which was sponsored by UPS, and did a two-semester program, two-semester program with UPS, and then was hired to work in the warehouse. And so he got a really good paying job and was working while going to school. And because of the flexibility that parents are demanding, he could work, come in the morning, go to school, and then leave to go home and rest and get ready for the night shift again. Otherwise, what's the alternative? If he didn't have that option, he would be working in the fields, which is a life, it's a profession we all need, but it's one that would have been forced on him, not one that he would have chosen. And another example I heard is a student, had a disruptive home life, didn't know if the electricity was going to be on when he woke up one day, didn't have food, struggled, would have washed right out of traditional school, found a program where while he was earning his high school education, he could also receive A+ certification, which is for IT, kind of the Geek Squad guys who help with IT support. And out of high school, got a job making $45,000, which is something that he could never have imagined would be possible for him. And those are kind of opportunities that integrating these important skills and instruction into their high school education, it changes their entire trajectory and brightens their future in ways that were not possible without that.
Well, finally, we call our podcast Next Round because of PRI's proximity to wine country and our love of discussing public policy while enjoying a glass of wine, or in Lance's case, a glass of blue soda, as he's not a drinker. So what beer or wine or cocktail or non-alcoholic beverage are you enjoying these days to unwind as you're working so hard to fight for much needed educational reform at the state capitol and around the state?
Well, this is the easiest question I've ever had to answer. So when I am unwinding with all my might, I will enjoy enjoy a glass of tequila on the rock. My favorite right now is a Cava de Oro reposado. I like a little bite to my tequila, so I like to taste it. That with lime and some muddled jalapeno is my idea of perfection on a Friday evening after a long week.
Well, I hope you'll get to enjoy many tequilas in celebration of your great work and advancements on behalf of the kids of our state. Roxana, thank you so much for joining us.
Thanks for having me. And thanks for all the work you're doing to help highlight these really important concepts for education in California.
If you like this episode, please tell your friends and subscribe to PRI's podcast at iTunes, Google Play, Stitcher, TuneIn, iHeartRadio, and Spotify. And when you're on these platforms, don't forget to give us a big 5 stars. If you don't subscribe to any of these, you can still listen on PRI's YouTube page, youtube.com/Pacific Research 1. That's the number 1. Thanks for listening. I'm Rowena Ichon. Hope you'll come back again for next round with PRI.